Welcome to The Impossible, where we empower others to face the impossible, inspire them to be impossible, and motivate them to do the impossible. I'm Matt, and back in the studio with my brother, Austin Douglas. We're excited to share a great episode with you guys today. We're going to be discussing the power of your mind. Here at Impossible Performance, we always like to say we are in the business of human potential, and we chase that primarily through the power of an impossibly strong mindset. Because most of us here have had our bodies beaten down and broken, and we've got incredible challenges we're overcoming, whether it's disease or missing limbs or whatever it may be. And the key to everything we chase and everything we show is that our success, our performance is so crucially rooted in the power of our mindset. And we always try to spread that example of when you can get your mind properly aligned, properly tuned, properly focused on everything you're chasing in life, and you can build a strong mindset behind that, then the body will follow suit. And I think we saw no better example of that than we did this past weekend at our powerlifting competition. Austin and I were able to step on the platform for actually the first time ever together in a competition. So it was incredible to be able to share that time and that experience. Absolutely. And to work together in that capacity. We've supported each other in different competitions in the past, but to get to do that side by side together was a totally new experience, and it was incredible. So we're going to take it back for a second and talk a little bit about how we got to this competition, what made us want to chase this competition, what we were chasing in this competition, and then we'll talk about the day itself, the challenges we encountered, how we were able to overcome them, and how we were able to reach for and chase numbers that should not have been possible, should not have been able to be done, yet were able to be achieved due to, like I said, that incredibly strong mindset we've been able to cultivate. We'll talk about how we got there, how we built that, and how you guys can start incorporating some of those strategies into your own life for anything you're chasing, whether it's powerlifting, business, family life, anything else in the world. All of these lessons will apply to whatever you're chasing. So, take it back. How did we end up signing up for the August meet?
So the August meet itself here at Monsters is one of the less populated powerlifting meets there at Monsters. So we knew that, for one, we wanted to have good representation of Impossible Performance there. And so that was pretty vital. And then secondly, at least for me, it had been quite some time since my previous powerlifting meet. And so that kind of perspective was extremely valued, and kind of my preparation for this was being so far out. And then thirdly, I would say, is we're both in the midst of training for a marathon. And and we may be crazy for this, but what would make this journey even more impossible is is taking some weeks to train for a marathon and train strength in the gym, and then go perform at a powerlifting meet that will impact our central nervous systems fairly harshly. But secondly, we have goals that we already have set for a post-marathon. And we weren't going to take this to an area where we would hurt ourselves, but at the same time we want to push ourselves and see what we can do. Mm-hmm. And this was an opportune moment for both of us, and again, some personal ways, but ultimately in the impossible way of really finding not a maximum, but kind of chipping away and polishing up what we've done before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's whenever we run into these situations of finding something crazy that you shouldn't do or should not be able to chase, that's usually what we dive right into. So it started kind of last year when I think August of last year was actually my first competition at Monsters, and I was training for a marathon again last year, and I ran the half marathon the week before. I was like, oh, I'll come back a week later and compete in the August comp, just because you should, by all rational logical thought, you shouldn't be able to do that.
Yep.
And so I think that mindset kind of carried through to this year. Like this late into marathon training, you shouldn't be able to do a powerlifting competition. And so much of the time, like our purpose is simply to just tear down those barriers, tear down those limitations in people's minds and show them like, no, you can step on the platform. Like, yeah, you may not be your number one peak performance. You may not have had time for the most like studious, intensive prep that you've ever had. You can still go out on the platform, give it everything you've got, and maybe find a little bit more, again, due to that mentality piece we talk about. And likely you might set some new PRs. You might achieve some numbers you never thought you'd be able to hit. You might find something else more in there that you definitely would not have found had you not stepped on the platform. So that's really what it comes down to a lot of the time for us, is finding those pieces and those places and those times where you shouldn't be able to do this, and yet we go out and do it as an example to ourselves and to everyone else that you don't have to listen to those limitations that are constantly placed on us by life and society and everything around us. But you had a kind of an extra, I don't want to say like challenge, but an extra reason that quote unquote maybe most people would say you shouldn't have been up there. And that's, as you guys have learned, and heard about, and if you haven't listened to those episodes, go back and check them out. Austin's done several updates of his cancer journey in the last few months, but we're still in a position of not knowing whether or not he has active cancer. And so how did that kind of play into your mind coming into this competition?
It's weighed fairly heavily on my mind as I've tried to hold firm and hold myself to the highest of standard on the day-to-day, and especially with the content, the traveling for work has gotten a bit more intense. You would think that I would almost not have the time to worry about it, but it's still subconsciously in my mind that we don't know if the cancer's still in my body or not. We have some strange activity, but we don't know what it is. And this meet, I would say the majority of my motivation to do the meet was because the timing was perfect for the scans that I have this week. I may be put into the position to where, in the next few weeks, if we do find out that it is cancer, I'll be initiating some other tests to be done, and then I would be starting treatment. And that prospect really, it doesn't scare me, but with how the past 4 or 5 months have been going, the beast that is rearing its ugly head is kind of getting bigger and bigger, without a whole lot of myself voluntarily feeding it. I'm really, really stifling it, but there's only so much that I can do as time goes along, and as certain realities have more time to fester. And that really fed into me coming into this powerlifting meet. It worked out great timing wise, like I said, and that was profound in itself. So yeah, that's this week here, getting these scans. They've kept me in check. Not necessarily been. I guess I could put motivation down as a part of it, but I don't. Like, that's not like the results of these scans are not going to dictate my life now or in the future in terms of my journey, the chase that I'm on, and my mental well-being. It has some weight to it, as I've already said, but for that to be some engulfing sense of despair, I absolutely not. And it's because I've been able to create these healthy what do you call them? Healthy things to take out any lingering anger or sense of, misdirection or misguidance, or kind of that limbo effect you may feel, on some of the rougher days. And I have rougher days, but the fact that I have training for a marathon, I have production of the podcast, I have lifting, I have very good, the best of the best of friends. I watch myself there. Since I have all of that, there's absolutely no reason for me to let it bog me down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think it's an excellent display of everything we preach as well. As I just talked about, like, you shouldn't be able to go up and compete in a powerlifting meet and set lifetime PRs.
Yeah.
The week before you have, or like not even the week, days before you have scans to find out if you have cancer or not. Like, who would do that? Yet, look at what that shows, not only to everybody around you, but what that shows to yourself. You go out and literally put on a display of maximum strength. You find a new potential of your own strength days before you face scans to figure out if you have cancer. What that does to your psyche, what that does to the message of who you are to yourself, what you gain from that is going to be infinitely more important and more vital in that battle against cancer than I think any amount of like rest and thought about the situation would ever provide.
Yeah.
And not only does it serve as that message to you and that reinforcement of like, look at the strength I have, I can face this. It also sends that message to others and shows them, hey, look what he's facing. And look what he's coming out to do. You can do that same thing in your life. And I think that's just such an incredible place to be, such an incredible perspective to have, and a perfect example of our message being spread. So when we signed up for this meet and decided to chase after it, we had some pretty unique training approaches coming into it. I think you signed up or committed to doing it, was it 6 weeks out from the meet?
7 weeks out, yeah.
Yeah.
Enough time to get a 6 week with deload week in it.
Yeah. So very short prep. You had basically no access to good, legitimate powerlifting training equipment, training in a commercial gym, and you're traveling all the time for work. So you're constantly in different gyms, like maybe hotel gyms here and there. And it's definitely far from an optimal, perfect situation. Myself, I was working on running, working on starting a new job, having a family. So it got to the point where I was only able to commit time to 1 day a week of training. I was doing an SBD day once a week. And again, both of those situations are another reason of like, you can't do that. You're not going to go out and perform optimally, whatever. And again, it's this, we get to the point where we start to crave those situations because we look at those and we say, okay, I'm going to take this suboptimal situation and I'm going to use the power of my mindset and the power of this message that we have to flip that around and achieve beyond optimal performance, not just in spite of those circumstances, but almost because of those circumstances, because nobody else would be out here doing this. Nobody else would think this was possible. Nobody else would find opportunity in these situations, but we're going to.
Yep.
And that's constantly the message we try to promote and spread to people, because in life, you're never going to have perfect circumstances. You're always going to have challenges you have to overcome. And if you can program your life to where you're constantly doing that in your electives, then it will become your default mode, your subconscious nature, by the time you get to those things in life that are obligations, that are requirements, that operate in the same kind of way. So, coming into meet day, what were you chasing? Whether it be numbers, whether it be particular moments, what was it you were chasing for meet day?
I can honestly, we'll just use those two as pretty much my aims. I had gone in knowing that I would push and break a PR, push for and break, PRs and squat and bench. But deadlift, I have to say, which deadlift is I love that movement, my favorite movement out of the three. I was scared to hit my previous PR in a meet, which was 352, 354, something like that. And so coming into it, I was excited but nervous. I really was to hit numbers, because I wanted to hit at least 4 for deadlift when I first set goals for the programming. And I had hit 335, I believe I hit a 345 in training, but that was my highest 1 rep max. And I'm like, for a competition that's less than 2 weeks out, really how much can my mind now? Oh, wow. I hadn't thought about that. How much can my mind override my sense of, or the position that my mind was in, going, the goal that I set is 55 pounds higher than what I've hit in training for this. And I've hit higher in the past, but that is 2023. So that is well before any of the marathon prep, and before a cancer relapse. So that included chemo. So I put myself a lofty goal because I knew I enjoyed the movement, but it did not go well during prep. With bench, with the help of monsters, my bench has skyrocketed. Like I hadn't been over 200 pounds ever. It may have been last year or sometime during this year. And with the help of other monsters, I shot above 200. And in prep, I hit 225 for one, I believe, twice. And the one time it went okay. The other time It went a little bit better, but I did have somebody there actually spotting me, so I was able to kind of take away the safe worries away. And so I was hoping for 250 at the meet. And then squat, I knew with squat, I had been fighting a lot of fears, a lot of demons. One of my concussions back when I was in high school was from a squat accident. I was squatting by myself and hitting a PR. I know, without safety bars, without zero safety, in a situation that I should not have put myself in, but I put myself in it, and I went forward with the weight as I was coming up. I stood up and then just went forward, and the bar landed on the back of my head and my face on the concrete. And if I wouldn't have 45-pound plates on that bar, we would not be having this conversation. So went to the hospital and, concussion, yada, yada, yada. And that was like 175, 185, something like that. And since then, it wasn't until getting to monsters, honestly. So this is 10 years that I didn't touch squat. I didn't want to do it. I did not want to squat. Absolutely not. I had no intentions of it. I honestly, I had a bit of a negative mindset to it, not for others doing it, but just simply for my participation in the movement itself. I had no desire to push that. And so coming through this programming, I didn't tell anyone about it at first, and I set myself a very lofty goal for the meet, and hit 275 in a previous meet, and it was there, but I didn't put 100% into it. And so this round here, I hit a PR 277 on the second rep, and then all of you guys walked up. You're like, you're doing 300, and I'm just like, I really don't want to do 300. You, Pete, I forget who else was there. You're there, Zach, and you're just all like, you're doing 300. And I'm just like, all right, I guess I'm doing 300. So I walk back to the table, and I believe I was shaking my head too, and I'm just like, looking at the sheet. I'm like, Johnny, here, 300, like 302. And I went up there, and that fight was incredible, absolutely incredible. I really enjoyed that. And mentally, what was the original question? I apologize.
Oh, you're all good. I was asking like what you were chasing in the meet.
Oh, chasing. Yeah. So those are the numbers. A 300 for squat. Bench was supposed to be 275 or no, 250. And unfortunately did not get close to that. But that's because sometimes I'm not a good listener. And then deadlift was 405. So, and chasing mentally was, I guess, what I was actually getting to there. Nice. Was that I had some fears to knock out of the park on squat, and I had a lot of, and then for deadlift was honestly frustration with myself for how the program went, for how training went. And with it being my favorite movement, that is where I knew I would have to take it to the next level, to a level that I've never gone to before for a lift ever. Squat, again, I was conquering, not necessarily conquering a fear, but I was helping myself realize that I can get beyond it. That I am beyond it. But for deadlift, I had to really, really chase down onto something to push myself through the 400. So,
yeah, it was an unbelievable day, and you were able to hit some pretty impressive numbers that I think, pretty much nobody would have like expected you to hit going into it. like you say, especially on deadlift, having the 50-pound PR goal.
Yeah.
With having, like, again, not a real prep, like, hadn't competed in 2 or 3 years, like, you know, not ideal circumstances for sure. Setting the lifetime squat PR, you know, bench is whatever. Nobody cares about bench.
I had that for bombing out on bench, man. I was honestly, I had high hopes.
Yeah.
Like that seemed to be, I'm cautious in saying this.
Mm-hmm.
I was least concerned about hitting my goal through bench.
Yeah.
That was my least. I was most expecting, I suppose, to be able to hit that goal on bench, because I felt phenomenal on bench during prep, and that was definitely not the case.
Yeah.
But you had some impressive squats, I must say.
Squats were fun. Squats are what I've been chasing for a while. Bench gets tough because it's so different in competition from what it is in training. You know, sometimes you got to get that programming built in to your training, just so you can get used to the movement and the method and everything in between. But yeah, to just kind of start off like the walk through the whole day. Of course, squats come first, and for good reason, because I believe, and I think many would agree, that they're the most difficult movement, the most physically taxing on the body, the most mentally demanding, and it's because it's the most dangerous movement. You know, it's the movement where you are physically underweight that could kill you in an instant. Mm-hmm. Bench press, you know, you kind of got that same thing, like you could drop the weight, but the rack has so many safeties built into it. You've got so many spotters. Generally speaking, on bench, you're gonna be fine. Deadlift, generally speaking, worst case scenario, you drop the weight.
Right.
You know, like you can definitely injure yourself, but you're not gonna like crush yourself. And squat, I think, really does a particularly good job of activating that life or death, flight or flight mechanism in the brain.
Yep.
Because even though there's like 1,000-pound toe harness straps on there, you know, and you got all these spotters around you, you are the only person supporting that weight when you unrack it. And you feel every pound. You feel the pressure. You feel that deep, innate human fear. And you have to overcome it. And so to put yourself in that kind of position, I mean, it can't help but unlock some level of greatness in your mentality. And for me, coming into this meet, squat has been my big focus for a while, and it was especially my big focus on Saturday, because in April of 2025, I'm chasing a goal to be the first amputee to squat 500 pounds in competition. As nearly as I can tell, that's never been done before, and I want to hit it. Mm-hmm. So this past, I would say maybe 6 to 8 months of training, and the next 6 to 8 months of training, as far as powerlifting is concerned, is dedicated toward that goal. In April of this year, I was able to squat 425 in competition in wraps, which was weight I never dreamed of touching. And I kept progressing on my squat to such a point, thanks to the help of an incredible coach, Jaden, who I hope we can bring you guys some more of his story as time goes along. But it was starting to progress, and I started getting these ideas in my head of, well, what if I could go out and squat raw in this competition, what I did in wraps just like 4 months ago. And again, it should have been kind of an impossible number, because my highest raw squat was 385, which I set back in December. And so this would be a 40-pound PR in just like 8 months of not very exclusive at all powerlifting training. Because again, we've been working on running and chasing the marathon and so many things like that. So it was a very lofty goal. Initially, I had actually just set to hit over a 400 squat. And then in these last couple weeks of training, for whatever reason, my numbers just absolutely took off. And particularly in my last heavy session, I squatted 400 in training when I was only supposed to hit like 385 or something.
Well, was there something specific that you had changed or something that had appeared in terms of like your technique and your form, or was it something in your mind that clicked?
It wasn't really anything as far as technique or form are concerned. I've been slowly learning a lot more about that over time. Again, like you say, just from being at Monsters and learning from some of the best with decades of experience. Obviously, I've been making those improvements over time.
Who have plates
on
that bar.
They do not squat less than 600
plate.
pounds. That's the minimum entry. I did figure out a couple, I think, key pieces as far as fueling goes that made a drastic difference. But even at the end of the day, I will always say that it all comes down to the mindset. And you would be amazed at what you can achieve simply from allowing yourself to believe you can achieve it. Mm-hmm. Simply from that thought alone, building that thought, that message into your psyche, into that default mental message you have about yourself. Because I would argue that probably 90% of people out there spend most of their mental messaging time telling themselves they can't do something. I mean, we see it all the time from people like we love and respect and adore. But for some reason, we've gotten to this point in society where we have made our default mode to tear ourselves down.
Yeah.
You know, and it even comes out in the little things of like, how are you doing today? Oh, not too bad. Why would you come up with that? Like, even if you're, you know, like what is, first of all, what does that even mean? Second of all, it's kind of by default a negative mindset.
Yes.
You know, like, okay, so you know that you could be doing worse, but today's not too bad. You know, like, you can be honest and upfront with how you're doing that day, but never allow that default message in your brain to be negative. You know, you see it again when, like, on meet day, you talk to so many people in there and you're like, hey man, you going to hit some heavy numbers today? And you're like, well, we're going to try. We'll see what happens. You know, and I don't judge anybody for saying that because it's an insanely hard thing to overcome. But we want to challenge you guys to start paying very close, careful attention to the thoughts that you allow to enter your brain, and more importantly, the words you allow to come out of your mouth. Because how is your body supposed to respond if the message it's gotten for the last 3 weeks, 6 weeks, months, years, however long, how is it supposed to respond if that message has been, well, maybe I'll hit this, but we'll see, you know, I don't know. And I think it comes from a place of wanting to stay humble.
Yeah.
And I highly respect that. Humility is a very admirable trait. But you can have the purest form of humility and the highest level of confidence at the same time. It's certainly a delicate balance. It may not even be an easy balance.
No, it's difficult.
But I believe that you can have both of those. There is a line that you can ride where you can stay humble, yet be extremely confident without crossing over into that level of, as Jordan Peterson so adoringly calls it, satanic arrogance. Which we won't go into that, or else it'll be a whole separate episode. We'll break it down some other time. But you can have that. And you can sometimes, in your own brain, in your own messaging, you can let yourself get a little bit overly confident to yourself. Sometimes that can be a mental trigger to help kind of bolster your spirits and help send that signal to the body of like, oh no, I know this situation isn't perfect. I know that there's no reason I should be able to go out and do it, but I'm going to go out and do it. Who else would be here doing this right now? Nobody, but I'm here doing this. You can send those kind of messages to yourself, to your own brain. That doesn't have to be arrogant. That can be confidence. That can be finding power, finding strength within yourself, and most importantly, allowing yourself to recognize your own strength and your own power.
And that's something that you train as well. That's something that you can take into when you go to work out for just your regular sessions. Find it to where you can click that in. Mm-hmm. So that way, if you're hesitant from your immense sense of humility, that you're like, oh, I can't take this outside of the gym. Okay, well then find the place that you need to travel to in your mind and kind of in your space that goes, okay, I'm in the gym. I am going to rip through this set on the way to my goal, on the way to the, on the journey, on the way to the meet. While I'm in the gym here, this is where I turn it on. But then when I walk out of here, I'm back to Austin. I'm back to Matt.
Yeah.
And go from there. If that would maybe help. It's not something, because I certainly, as soon as you said that, I have some experience with, I really can't let that loose. I can't, I want to be confident, but my God, I don't want to, that can be uncontrollable. That kind of sense of I'm just, I'm so strong right now, because that is necessary, but at the same time, it's something that needs to be controlled. So train it. Train it just like your muscles, because it is, in a sense, a muscle that you're training.
Austin is 1,000% correct. Your mindset and your mentality is a trainable skill, just like anything else. And we would argue that it's the most important skill that you can train, because everything else you do in life, everything else you chase, will stem from that. And if you can get your mindset to an impossible place, then everything else will start to follow suit in your life. And the reason we kind of keep bringing this up more and more and more is because we're actually starting to work on building some structure, some programs, and some resources for you guys, for our listeners, and for our followers to have, so that you can have kind of a structured, defined guide of, well, how do I build this into my life? Just like you have programming and you have set training and peaking and deload and everything involved in a powerlifting program, you can build that same structure for your own mentality. And that's something we want to be able to offer you guys. So we're working on building that right now, and you'll see our content start to focus more and more and more on this piece. Mm-hmm. Because, as I said before, neither of us have any remote special genetic gifts when it comes to athletic performance. Neither of us have any anatomical builds that make us just like freakish specimens on the platform. And beyond all of that, our bodies have been ravaged by disease and by toxic chemotherapy and everything else that goes along with it. So we've had to find something to leverage, something more, something deeper, something that we can take these bodies that should be at such disadvantage, yet find advantage within them, within the situations. And that piece that we've leveraged has always been mindset. And we found structure and programming and training for it in our own lives and our own paths. So we're going to be working to bring that to you guys. And I think that this competition was a perfect example of just that. Mm-hmm. How do you take an impossible situation, find leverage, find advantage in it, and come out the other side having done things that you should not have been able to do? And I believe it all starts with what we just talked about, that messaging to yourself about yourself. Who am I? What am I here to do? What am I going to make happen? That piece alone will dictate so many of your subconscious actions, your subconscious preparations, your subconscious thoughts, your subconscious feelings. throughout not just prep, but like the day of itself, when you go to face that bar, face that weight, and perform that lift. So coming into squat, you opened up, I think, a little lighter just to secure something, get something out.
235, yeah.
Yeah, which is a strategy I use myself. I always open light just to secure something, get the feel for it, and then I go a little more crazy on my next two.
Because I don't like to do anything too heavy in the warm-up area.
Yeah.
For me, like not 100 pounds below, but like not 20 pounds below.
Yeah,
so
that's how I am with the fueling challenges and the health challenges. I don't like to waste energy.
Right.
So I get my body warm, but I'm not pulling 80% in the warm-up room.
Blood flow, not overstimulation of the CNS before you even get out there.
Exactly. And it's different for everybody.
Right.
But that's our particular strategy. So coming into the second attempt, you're facing a lifetime PR.
Yes, 277.
What's going through your mind as you face this?
I was not frightened whatsoever. Bluntly, I knew that I had a lot more than 277 in the tank. I knew that I was focused on the third set. I was not overtly focused on the second. I knew from training that I was feeling phenomenal. And so when the 235 went as smoothly as it did, I knew the second set was not the reason that I was there. Mm-hmm. Was not the reason for me having found that kind of found more of the trees, you know, when you can't see the forest full of trees. Like I found that patch that would allow me to continue on the journey of really increasing weight quickly on squat. And so that 277 went up smooth, and I didn't think the 300 was going to be the third, honestly, because I was like 277, okay, that went great. Well, maybe I could do like 285, 290. 290 was what was in my head. And then all of you
we like rushed you.
Like 4 or 5 of you standing
yeah, we're
there.
like, we cannot let him miss this opportunity, because it is always so different when you're under the bar moving the weight versus when you're watching it. Mm-hmm. It always feels so much harder when you're doing it than it looks when you're watching it.
Yep.
Which is kind of a weird phenomenon. But even to yourself, like, if you would go back and watch video of that 277, you would notice that it looked way easier than it felt at the time.
Right.
And I think that that's just another perfect reflection of life in general. Like, the challenge when you're going through it is always so much more difficult than when you look back and reflect upon it. Mm-hmm. And so I think you once you get around powerlifting long enough and you start, you know, seeing enough people and knowing what things look like we all get pretty good at seeing somebody's lift and knowing, like, oh yeah, they've got another 20 pounds, they've got another 10 pounds. You know, we just get used to kind of seeing like where that true 100% and then beyond that really lies. But you'd still hit 277. We were telling you to go up over 300. Some people were telling you to go 315.
Yeah.
That's like a 20 to 30 pound jump, 25 to 30 pound jump. Not only that, but it's like a 10 to 15% increase on what you just said as a 1 rep max, which that is a big percentage. We're not talking 2 to 3% here, which is custom in a lot of situations. We're talking like 10 to 15% increase. And I would guess that started to instill some of that fear within you?
I would have to disagree.
Okay.
I was somewhat nervous, but I was quiet because I knew, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to dig deep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to dig deep. And it was not, I can promise you that it was not in spite of anything.
Yeah.
It was most certainly, I sat there because I was like, okay, this is going to be heavy. This is going to be, obviously, as we've explained, the heaviest weight ever on my back, and I thought to myself, this may be the heaviest weight on a bar on my back, but this is not the heaviest experience that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I had a place to go.
And that's where we talk about using these situations in life, using these challenges, leveraging them to find opportunity. Because you've battled through things that are so much heavier than this.
Mm.
And you're able to incorporate that into that mindset piece of, hey, look what I've done, look what I've battled through, look what I've fought through. I can face this. Even if it doesn't seem like something I should be able to do, I've done impossible before. I'll find a way within to do it again. And it almost kind of sounds like you were able to take those feelings of fear and nervousness and anxiety that arise and just put them to the side.
Yeah.
Because
I knew I had to.
Yeah. In that moment, they're not, you don't have room for anything that's not fruitful, that's not beneficial to you. And when you can learn to, and again, this is something that everybody can learn. It's a muscle you can flex. It's a skill you can develop. You can learn to become a conscious observer of your own emotions. And you can learn and develop skills to be able to pick and choose, set certain emotions to the side for a time being when you know that they're not fruitful, you know that they're not beneficial, and you can foster other messages and emotions and beliefs and feelings within yourself and flourish those a little bit to help drive toward a certain goal. And that's exactly what you have to do under that squat bar, especially when you're facing a challenge as such. So you pick the number, you pick 302. You get a brief amount of time to kind of set yourself, set your mind, set your body in the right place for it. And then you walk onto the platform. What's going through your mind as you step up to the bar, lift up the weight, and go to perform the lift? What does that process look like for you?
The song was Hamraner Hippia. Hippia. I hope I'm saying that right. Probably not. From Heilung. Listening to that in the headphones. And that is just, it's a pounding, a repeated beat from some very low-tuned, animalistic, primal drums. And some Tibetan throat singing, some singing, some screaming, and that was going through my headphones for about 7 minutes. And go up, you feed me the ammonia, and I get up to the platform, and the only thing in my mind is, I have to do this. And we had monsters there working the monolift and and part of the crew, and so and they were just like lightweight, get it, and I was just like, all right, I have no other choice. so I get underneath the bar, and my word, that was a lot of weight. Yeah. that was not light. The 277, I was like, okay, this is kind of heavy, but we should be good. But that 302, I was just like, whoa,
yeah,
that's a lot of weight.
Nothing can prepare you for just that amount of pressure. And so much of powerlifting is not even about the strength. It's about managing the pressure of the weight. Putting 300 pounds on a 190 pound frame, and being moving, like being dynamic with it.
Right.
Your bone structure is now supporting your body weight plus an additional 300 pounds. And not only that, but your nervous structure has to learn to operate under that kind of weight. Mm-hmm. And so much of the time that can be the biggest challenge beyond even the strength component itself.
Oh, absolutely. And that pretty much as soon as I lifted the bar, I was like, okay, this is a lot of weight, but I have to stand up. Got to the bottom. I really don't think. What was nice about it was I wasn't so much in my head at that point. Mm-hmm. I kind of, how would you say that? Not spiritually. It was somewhat of an outer body experience, I must say. I was not in here. Like, probably should have somewhat been kind of going through the checks of like, okay, I'm here, keep it control. There's depth. It was a natural movement. I was not outside looking at myself, but I was kind of like above my head going like, all right, we got to go that way. The entire time I was just thinking, you have to stand up. That was the only thing going through my head. Not worrying about depth, not worrying about balance. I let that stuff kind of go and hope that it worked. So if I wouldn't have hit depth, I could not have been upset with anyone because I was not aware of that at all. I was simply reminding myself and only concerned and only looking up. In terms of my mind, I was looking just straight up. I was like, wait, can we go that way? So yeah, that was an incredible experience. And that's what ultimately, like, as soon as I sat down from that, I was pretty drained, pretty exhausted, because that was not only a physical game, but a mental match that I endured, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it will drain you mentally, physically, and emotionally. The kind of place you've got to put yourself in to handle and work and function under that kind of weight can be incredibly draining on the body. But because of that, it can also be incredibly building for the mind, body, mm-hmm. and the soul. Because again, when you work through and battle through and fight something like that, and you voluntarily face something could kill you, and you find a way to come out and achieve under that pressure, under those circumstances, it opens your mind up to a whole new potential about yourself and where you can go and everything else you're chasing in life. Mm-hmm. And that's really the lift I was there for that day, was the squat. My last several competitions and my next few will be the squat. I never used to like squatting, actually, because of the particularly intense challenge that it poses on me with having the one leg and the prosthetic that doesn't move quite right through the movement and everything else. It's always one that's felt awkward, felt clunky, felt difficult, felt weird, felt unnatural, felt dangerous to me. And it wasn't until I got to Monsters and got to working with some truly incredible people that really knew what they were doing and were able to help me open up a lot in form of technique and movement and leveraging different strength systems throughout the body, that I was able to start seeing my squat grow. And it was this competition last year, I squatted 300 pounds for the first time. I think I actually squatted exactly what you just squatted, 302. Mm-hmm. And that was something I never thought I'd see myself do on one leg. And so since then, I've kind of started going down this rabbit hole of squatting more and more and more. And of course, we have squat Saturdays at Monsters. So there's always, once a week, we always get this big group kind of focused on that one movement. And I think it was early this year, I first got the idea that April 2025, I wanted to squat 500 raw with one leg in competition, which, again, to the best of my knowledge, had never been done before. But in December, I hit 386, and there's a big difference between 386 and 500 pounds. In April, I hit 425 in reps. I was able to attempt a rep at 440, didn't end up making it. But even then, there's a big difference between 425 and 500, and I was in reps. Mm-hmm. So, reps changed the game entirely compared to squatting raw. So after that, I was like, man, that's a lot of work, a lot of weight, a lot of strength to build in 1 year's time. And coming into this competition, I was really just hoping to break through that 400 barrier raw. And then, like I say, the last couple weeks, a lot of things started to unexpectedly unfold in terms of performance. And I realized that goal was no longer good enough. And I started getting the crazy idea. I was like, well, what if I could come back 4 months later and squat raw what I did in reps, the meet prior? And that, over the last 2 weeks, became my new goal. But it never gets easy to face something impossible like that. You keep raising the bar, and even though you've done this before, you've been here before, you've done things you never thought you would achieve before, it's never easy to wrap your mind around the acceptance that you're going to make this happen. Yet, through this mindset and through this message that we cultivate, it can become a process that you work through and allow yourself to achieve time and again. And so I opened up light, honestly lighter than I originally expected, like 373. Again, just had I think the biggest warm-up I did was, I want to say it was like just over 300 in warm-up. I can't remember truthfully, but I think I only did three reps of warm-up. And went out to hit that 373 and just smoked it. Just moved great. And my nose actually busted open on that first rep, and I was like, that's how you know it's going to be a good day. So I felt really good after that. And I was just dialed in, ready to tackle the next one. I called second to 407 because I'd done 402 in training. So I thought, well, I'll set a small PR on my second attempt and then go crazy for my third. And for whatever reason, that day, that morning, my brain, my mentality, my emotions were going to some like really wild places. Some very powerful places, but just some like unexpected levels of intensity like I'd never felt before. I've always kind of had this process of being able to leverage emotions and experiences in my life. If you guys want to hear more about that, you can check our podcast episode out called Risking It All, about where like I specifically go in my mind when I'm facing some of these impossible things, and the experiences and emotions that I leverage in order to help fuel a lot of those. But this time I was working through that normal process, but it was hitting me in a way that it had never really hit me before. And I go up to do the 407. It should have been a very doable, not easy, but like a doable lift for me. And I end up walking up to the platform, getting under the weight. I'm like a second from lifting the weight up. And in my mind, there's like alarms going off, like something's not right. Something doesn't feel right. Something's not normal here. Because you do this whole setup time and time and time and time again that you get so much habit built around it that if something's not quite right, you're going to feel it. You're going to notice it. And I've learned to pay attention to those moments, because when you're dealing with max effort weight, it only takes one very small thing to go wrong and you're not okay, you know? So I immediately do a quick scan and I realize, oh, I don't have my belt, which can be a very important piece of equipment under those settings. So I actually get out from under the bar and I run out and grab my belt. You know, after I've done this big giant mindset build up, I get myself in the perfect spot mentally, emotionally, physically to do this rep. And I'm like, hold on, let me grab my belt. And there's different schools of thought there. I could have, and maybe looking back, I would have just done the rep anyway. Like, again, it's that our mindset piece of like, you know, okay, nobody should be able to do this rep without the belt, but I'm going to face it. I'm going to do it, you know, and that would have been a perfectly legitimate process and school of thought. But again, it's something I'm used to having, something I'm used to working with. And I knew the reason I didn't go ahead with the rep that in that moment is I knew that I could get myself right back there mentally where I needed to be. And that is another part of this skill, is when that mindset process gets interrupted, how do you immediately switch it back around to get yourself right back to that spot?
Build up that dexterity.
Yeah, when you need to. That's a perfect word, like dexterity with it. And I knew I could do that. So I'm like, okay, I'll go grab my belt. Went and grabbed my belt, got it on, got myself very quickly right back to that spot, got under the bar, lifted the bar up, and then I realized that when I went to go grab my belt and everything, my right knee sleeve that goes over my prosthetic had slipped down. So I had a knee sleeve on the left side and nothing on the right side, which if you've never squatted with knee sleeves before or never worked with like max effort weight in that capacity, let me tell you, that's going to throw you off, having not just like two different leg situations going on, but having one knee sleeve on one side and having not one on the other side at a max effort weight. And I didn't realize it until I'd already had the bar unracked. I could have put it back down, fixed the knee sleeve, and got back under it. But this is an example where I'm like, you know what? I already stopped once. I'm back where I need to be mentally. I'm just going to make this happen. And what's cool about it is internally, I immediately saw that as a moment of opportunity. I didn't see it, because where your brain subconsciously will always go is it will say, oh, I don't have this knee sleeve on. Oh, I don't have this belt on. I can't do this lift. That is where your brain will default go. But if you work through this process enough, if you work at building up this mindset, get yourself to a place where, oh, that knee sleeve's not on, that's an opportunity to do something even greater, to perform a max effort squat under even less optimal conditions. That makes that win, that victory, even greater. It makes it so much sweeter, and it becomes an even more powerful reinforcement to yourself of you can operate under imperfect circumstances. And so what you can achieve from that in those types of situations can be so much greater. And when you allow your brain to immediately switch to that kind of mindset, then you'll be able to handle those situations, those imperfect situations, so much more quickly and more reliably when they do pop up in life. Because I could have gone through better preparation, not forgotten my belt, and then the knee sleeve wouldn't have been an issue either. I could have controlled that situation better, but there are situations in life where you can't control it, and imperfect things arise that you have no control over whatsoever. So I go down, hit depth, and come back up, and I feel that shift on the right side, and things are not evened out, not feeling how I'm used to. And I hit this like sticking point, and yet I'm fighting and powering through, and I end up completing the rep, hitting the 407, but I get called no lift because when I hit that little sticking point, and you can see it pretty clearly in the video, it was a good call on the judges, I come down just slightly, like a half inch or so.
Yeah.
And that's a big piece to all powerlifting movement. Like once the bar starts in a particular direction, it's not allowed to change the path of direction until that part of the lift is complete. So when you're coming up out of the squat, you can't come up and then go back down and finish the lift. It's got to come up the whole time through. Now it can change speed and everything, but it can't change direction. So there we are. Second attempt, I get called no lift on a 407. So right now, the best I've done on squat, as far as the competition's concerned, is a 373. And this is just one of those beautiful circumstances where you either find challenge or you find opportunity. Mm-hmm. Because what every powerlifter, according to all societal standards of the sport, should do in that situation is you, quote unquote, should call the 407 again and hit the 407.
Right.
Because when you call these numbers, once you've gone up to a weight, you can't go back down. You can stay the same or you can go up. And because I missed that 407, I'm starting to look and think, well, I could just hit like a 412 or a 416 or a 418. I knew that I had the ability to lift it, and I knew that I messed up my setup for it. And that caused me to be a little shifted, a little off, and not get a good lift per the judges, but I did still complete the rep and everything. Mm-hmm. You know, it was like I lifted the weight, and I knew I had the strength to do it. And as I'm looking at these numbers, and I'm thinking, I'm like, you know what? I came here to do a 425. I missed a 407. There is no logical reason in the world that I should jump up 20 pounds from a lift I just missed. But that is who we are. That is our message. That is our mindset. And I will always prefer to fail at something while chasing the impossible than to ever succeed at something I know I can do. To me, the success comes in facing something impossible and having to be impossible in that moment. Choosing to put yourself under that weight and in that situation that should not be able to be done. And you won't always come out victorious in the way you might imagine. But the mentality and the fortitude, the strength and resilience you'll gain from putting yourself in those positions will be so much more valuable. And not only that, but you will have moments where you choose to put that unruly faith in your own potential, and you will succeed in ways that you never could have imagined. And that makes the 100 failures that led up to that moment immensely worth it. Mm-hmm. So I realized, you know what? I've got a responsibility to my own potential, to this message, to this mindset that we put forth. I'm calling 425. And that's what I called. And then, you know, returned to rest up a little bit, sit and spend some time with my daughter who was able to be there, and you guys. And I think really a lot of that process and even walking back up to the bar was kind of a blur. And I probably cracked some joke along the way about making sure I didn't forget my belt again. I actually had my setup perfectly aligned for the 425. But I remember hearing the platform ready, walking up to the platform and turning around, like nodding at Wade like I was doing every single time, because he's my favorite guy to have behind me in those moments. He just has a way of really poking the right places in my mindset. And he's also a man I trust with my life to catch me if something goes wrong. And he's somebody that I know will never let me settle for less than my highest potential. So I give a nod to him, and I turn around and I face that bar, and there's like already like tears streaming down my eyes. And in this moment, I'm just thinking about that kid who came out of a coma after having battled through ECMO and 9 months of chemotherapy. That kid who was told he should have lost his life. That kid who was told he would never walk again. He would never mentally function independently again. That kid who was told he wouldn't be able to chase his hopes and his dreams in life. The kid who wasn't strong enough to lift his own hand. The kid that couldn't stand up by himself. The kid that had to learn to walk again, to read, to write, to eat, to swallow again. And in those moments, everything I do is for him. Because if he had known then that one day he would have the opportunity to fight against 425 pounds, it would have given him so much hope and so much passion for life. So I owe it to him because he became the man I am today. And obviously I have a lot of emotion tied up in those memories, those experiences in my life. And I've learned to be able to leverage and use those to drive forward an impossible level of performance. But what I built up inside of me that day, what I knew I had to build up, was something unlike I'd ever experienced before. Because I just failed 407, and here I am choosing to go 20 pounds heavier on a lift that I barely completed in wraps just 4 months prior, with an imperfect prep, with, battling through some weird unknown disease, having just traveled, all these things that come out, all these reasons that you shouldn't be able to be here doing this. I knew I had to find a whole new level to somehow pull this off and make this happen. And you'll see it in the video when I go to get under the weight, I start to lift it off and realize my positioning isn't correct. So I adjust and have to lift it off a second time. And it's one of those moments where just picking the weight up puts you in under an impossible amount of pressure. Mm-hmm. And you're faced with the battle of well, how do I stand here with this, let alone squat it? Yet these images and these thoughts and these emotions are running through my brain and building and building and growing, and the intensity becomes fiercer and fiercer. And I take my breath, I lock in my bracing, and I just go down. And I'm listening to Wade yelling in my ear. He's yelling, down, 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 because he's watching my depth. He knows I need to go deeper. And I'm just focusing on controlling. And then I hear the up command. And it's like all of that intensity, all of that emotion, everything I'd been building up just exploded throughout my body. And you can see it in there. That weight comes up just so fast until I hit this sticking point at the top. And it is weird because usually you don't have a sticking. Once you get past that halfway point, mm-hmm. It's generally pretty easy from there. But it was I had this surge and it got me past that sticking point and through 75% of the lift. But my sticking point happens at 3/4 of the way up. And that's where it's almost just I think you see the visible representation on my face and my body of what I'm feeling internally. And that's where I just start screaming. Yeah. My nose busts open everywhere. And I just literally, through sheer force of will, force that lift to come up that last little bit. And again, in the video, you can see I never even look back to see what the judges called. Like, I didn't even realize I did, but I did not even remotely care what they called. I get out from under that bar and I sprint back to Clayton's office, and my whole body is shaking. I'm like crying and moaning, and like I had a full on like mental and emotional breakdown for a little bit there. And it took me probably 20 minutes to return totally to baseline. But and that sounds like it was maybe a scarier, like negative experience, but for me, that was the best lifting experience I'd ever had in my life. Because just like in 2017, when I finished that first half marathon and found a whole new level of potential and power within the human mind, on Saturday, I found that same exact thing at an even higher level. Mm-hmm. Something I never even knew was there, something I never even expected. And looking back, like I feel in that moment, I could have had 50 or 100 more pounds on that bar, and there's no way I would have failed it. Like there was just something different, something deeper, something way more powerful in the human mind and spirit that I was able to tap into to complete that lift. And it was just such an honor to be able to face that weight and to go to that place with it. So that was squats. And for me, everything from there, that was what it was all about for me. The rest of the meet was, I wanted to conquer some impossible things, particularly on deadlift, but it was just to enjoy the moment with my family, with the men and women of Monsters, and see what we could make happen. So I guess we'll cover bench kind of quickly, because for me, I wasn't chasing anything on bench big. I had only trained bench twice in like the last month, so I had not had a lot of work up for it. I actually came out feeling pretty strong on bench that day. Hit a 229 opener, came with a 255 second attempt. Both those flew great. And then I was like, well, maybe I'll chase that 300 finally. So I went for the 302 on bench. And it came out, hit the sticking point, just barely started to come down, and they grabbed it from me. So, again, good call would have been no lift. Just wasn't there that day. But I was not.
Yeah, just benching my new max squat.
It was just, well, I didn't bench it. This is the thing. I'll let Wade get too into my head.
Attempting it.
Call some crazy numbers. But I know bench was when you were expecting to hit some big numbers in.
I've been feeling fantastic in training, like I said. I found great stability. I didn't have any side collapses for the heavier lifts throughout training. So I came in at 205, and I failed it because I did not adhere to the rack command, which is just something that I had not trained. Like as soon as I got the weight to the top, training by myself especially, I was like, I don't want to hold this any longer. So you lock it out and you're just like, all right, let's go. And so I got back to you guys, and you and Pete were just like, hey, it's fine. Just when you get up to there, just hold it there. Just hold it. I'm like, fine. So I go in to do the second lift with 220, and I failed it. Something happened, and I caught maybe 3 or 4 inches up, and I was just like, oh, nope. And I started going down, and I'm just like, take it.
And for the vast majority of people, if you fail a weight on bench, it is beyond impossible to come back and hit it on your third attempt. For whatever reason, like with that movement specifically, I don't know if it's how your body wears down or how many moving pieces there are with the mechanics, but it's like to go out and fail a weight on bench and then to come back and hit it. I don't know that I've ever seen that before. I've definitely never done that myself before. I can promise you that. And so to go into this third attempt, it was like even more crazy, like what you had to face to try to come back and actually hit the weight on the third attempt after having failed it.
Yeah, the mindset was definitely a bit concerned, because I knew that if I failed this one, that I was going to bomb out. And I let the excitement get to me a little too much, because I did go in and I did lift it. Got to the top, and I'm just sitting there thinking, like, heck yeah, I just did that. And then I racked it without waiting for the command. So I bombed out of the meet, technically, which means that they stop recording you in terms of, like, if you were chasing something, and also in terms of the competition for competing against others. But they, like, you can still go and continue lifting, and they'll record those, but you're not eligible for awards and etc., which is definitely not why I was there. That could not be bothered by that. And so I was like, well, that's fine. Deadlift's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So deadlifts were next.
Yeah.
And that's where I turned on. I kind of flipped over. We went out, and my rental has massaging front seats. So both Matt and I took a nice little hiatus from the meet, and went out there and kind of took a little nap, rested a little bit. My lower back actually was starting to lock up from the squat, and the massage helped, but sitting down and not moving did not help. So it's kind of weird in that. And so I went back inside, and I was like, okay, well, things could be worse. So I
remember you saying that, like, your back was pretty taxed from that squat.
Oh, it was extremely taxed.
Makes sense. I mean, you do 2 max effort, 2 PR squats in a row. Like, it's going to wear you down, and then you go bench and spend a bunch more energy on that. Which
also expended some of the lower back as well for me, and I don't know why. I don't know if my arch was off, or if I was not used to that grippy of a bench. And so I think what happened was I put my lower back at an angle or an arch that was ready to compensate for slight movement while benching heavy that I have to experience on commercial gym benches. But this bench here was super. You were stuck. Yeah, you weren't moving, you. and I yearned for that, but I don't get that.
Yeah,
and so my body was just not used to it, and I really think that made things worse. And so coming into deadlifts, I have to say I was a bit nervous. I really was. Because as soon as that lower back goes, for me, just in training wise, I was like, well, that was one of my bigger, how can I say, obstacles I was facing while training. Was I had spent my lower back somehow. I think it was most likely from one day I felt tough. Don't know why. And I would deadlift and then just rack it up on the safety bars for the squat on the lowest portion. I would just rack it there, put the weights on, unrack it, drop it, and then go. And I did that all the way up to like 315. And that was not the shouldn't have done that. Really shouldn't have done that. So coming into it, I was nervous, lower back issues. And so I started off with 335 on deadlift, and that went up smooth. It really did.
Really smooth.
Yeah, it shot up, and I was just like, okay, alrighty. Because my other issue was leaning too far forward, hips rising too fast, which before this prep, I didn't have that issue. But during this prep, as soon as I got heavy, I just immediately would resort to that, hunched back kind of structure. And I'm like, what is going on here? And I was catching it in training. And so I thought to myself, going into the second rep at What was my second?
378, I thought.
Yeah, I say yeah, 370 something.
Yeah, because
And I
you
was
took
like,
a big jump between first and second.
because it went up so well, and then again, you guys were like, "Oh, you got this, and I'm like, "All right, I got it." And so the second rep was rough, but that was an all-time raw PR, and by 20 some pounds. And so I was like, okay, let's do this. So I get up there, and I had a mind, kind of a fixture there, like in place, but it wasn't like the third rep. So the second rep goes up well, and you guys were just like, go for it, go. And we knew about I had done 405 in the gym with figure 8 straps. And so, and you knew that, and you were just like 407, and I'm just like, oh, alrighty, we're gonna do it. 407 raw. My gosh, let's do it. And that's when I shut everything outside of me off. And I played on repeat, like my track, my song for that is Earthless by Humanity's Last Breath. And that's a song that in Cleveland, receiving the rituximab plus AVD, it was about a 6.5 to 7.5 hour ordeal, just depending on how fast the pharmacy could get the drugs up. And I would listen to Earthless on repeat for 7 hours. I did that a few times. And you would think that listening to less apocalyptic music would be the choice in that matter, and it wasn't for me. Not at least when the drugs were being delivered. I allowed myself to feel the anger in those moments, so that when I left, I wouldn't feel so naively frustrated with others. And so Earthless, it lyrically it's definitely intense.
Yeah.
The music itself is intense as well. Like some of the lines are like a voiceless choir weeping, contorted bodies stacking, a migration beyond Earthless. And then it goes into how does it go? Yeah, voiceless choir weeping, contorted body stacking, descending through nothing. And that on repeat is fuel for me, because that's how I felt in those moments. Locked, not physically, but figuratively locked to a chair for 6 hours with that machine beeping. And I have vivid nightmares of the machine that delivers the medication to you has this particular sound to it that makes my stomach turn. Just constant. And so when it comes to those lifts, and especially this one here, I knew that, and from here on out, I'm going to have to find something. I'm going to have to find a place pretty dark, because as we've discussed before, I should, to a point, I don't know if I should be here and should be doing this, but I am, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And powerlifting and moving these kind of weights is something that I never really had the thought of doing up until I got here to Monsters and reminded myself that I am strong in more than just one fashion. Between that and the cancer diagnosis, I've found that I can be strong in what I choose and what I want to chase after. And so walking up to that 407, you push the right buttons. And it was like 5 or 6 words that you said to me, and that, yeah, I found that place. And what's nice is that the deadlift motion kind of ties into that, being locked into a chair. And I tried to sit just as deep as I possibly could when I rolled that bar back. Seeing that lift hundreds of times from Eddie doing the 500 kg. That's all I picture. Every single time that I go in for a heavy lift like that, that's all I picture. That's all I want to do is just sit as far back as possible. And yeah, stood up with it. That was rough. That was a rough lift. that was heavy. But ultimately it I think it moved a lot better than what I had anticipated. But I was able to keep form. I was able to keep back on the initial lift. I was able to sit, to not allow the hip rise to happen too soon. And so as soon as I got it, previously my sticking point was like getting it above my knee. If I can get it above the knee, golden. But as soon as I lifted off the ground, as soon as it started moving, I was there. But again, like with the heavy squat, I was kind of like, we're going to stand up. Mm-hmm. There really wasn't another option that I'd given myself, or that you had given me. So I do remember that moment of looking down at the ground. At first, that initial pull up, and as soon as it started moving, I was like, this is done. We're good. So, and I got a no lift because
I kind of forgot about this part.
So I get it to the top, and I get it hinged, or not hinged, but I get it to the top, and
you lock it out.
I lock it out, and it's riding up against the singlet. I couldn't get it up. I couldn't get it up and above, and so that's why I started shaking a little bit. Mm-hmm. Was like I was kind of doing a strongman thing. I'm like, okay, I'm getting caught on the singlet, so I'm just going to continue to rip. But then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm at the top, and then I start screaming, and when I went to drop it, I knew I was dropping it, but I'm like, okay, I need to keep my grip on it, and I won't be called for it, But come to find out, if your elbows bend on the way down before you get to the bottom, it's called like a throw down, like you threw the bar down. And I was the only thing I actually,
Oh yeah, I see it.
Like,
he's got a bruise on his knee.
I have a bruise on my knee from going the way down, because I just, as soon as I got to the top, I'm like, as soon as I got to the top and started screaming, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. And kept my grip on it, and I thought that was going to be enough, but I didn't know about that rule, and which is fine. When you look at the replay, it does mimic you throwing the weight down, but I kept with the weight. I mean, I'll say for the future, as I continue up in weight, I'm not setting that weight down. Like, that's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. So if that means that I'll fail the top rep for the rest of time, I really don't care. As long as I lock out the bar, that's my main concern. Count me out for the rest of them, but I'll definitely try to keep my arms straight going down, but I'm not lowering, because did you notice that a lot of the lifters after me were slowly putting that bar down? Mm-hmm. And I felt bad for them. I'm like, if you're doing that by choice, awesome. If you're doing that because I got counted out, like screw that, man. Please don't. Like that, like having that kind of hesitancy now installed into the rest of the lifters. If that, I just hope that I wasn't the motivation behind that. Because if I was, that's unfortunate, even though it's the judge's call. It's not the judge's fault. They did what they were supposed to do, but I really hope that wasn't because of me. Because I just said that I don't want to do that. I don't want to set the bar down nicely like that, like a teacup set. I'm not doing that. But just for the future, it's something to keep in the head. But for me, I know for my body weight, I'm not achieving any records. I'm very aware of the weight of the totals that people in my weight class put up. I'm not achieving that, and that's fine. That is not my life goals. I'm not bothered by that at all. I'm there to have a good time. I'm there to lift heavy with my friends, and knowing that I locked out the bar and got the down command, that's when I'm done. After that point, what also sucked was the crowd was just like, oh, and I wish I would have. I had the presence in mind to hear that they did that, but I wish I would have. I wish I could have come up with something in that moment to go like, no, like let's go, like don't.
Yeah, because you weren't chasing
I'm
any
like,
judge's approval. You weren't chasing any records. You
don't look at that
placement.
monitor.
Yeah,
like let's go. Like I did the lift. All right, just relax. Everything's fine.
Yeah.
So
you were chasing a new potential for yourself and defining your own strength, and you hit that lift by every standard of the definition, even the powerlifting standard. You just got a little too excited when you put it down, mm-hmm. which happens to everybody. We all make those mistakes. It's okay. But that, you bring up a good point in that shouldn't make it mean anything less than what it was to you.
Yeah.
And that's something we all need to focus on, because at the end of the day, it's great to chase records. It's great to chase placements. It's great to chase all of these external achievements, but never for a second let that overshadow the internal strength and understanding of who you are that you achieve from these lifts and these moments.
And what it can mean to you.
Yeah, because that's going to be so much better fuel and validation and motivation and drive for you going forward than any title, any record, anything could ever mean.
Right, because I'm not worried about that weight now. Like, now that weight will be on my way up to my next PR.
Absolutely.
So that's
absolutely
golden.
And now you can, kind of bringing it all back full circle, now you have the opportunity to approach these scans tomorrow and the results on Thursday, knowing that you are the strongest you've ever been in your life. So whatever may come, you are better equipped to fight it, to manage it, and to face it than you've ever been before.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the purpose of everything we do. Building this mindset and learning to utilize it in all of life's challenges, both elective and obligatory, so that you can build a stronger person. You can find a higher level of potential. You can become someone impossible, someone who should not have been able to exist, someone who should not have been able to do the things that you are doing in the face of any challenge that you find in life. That's why we went out to chase this meet. That's why we chase everything we chase from a day-to-day, year-to-year perspective in Impossible Performance. And it's why we're working so hard to spread this mission and this mindset to help you guys find the exact same potential in your life. Because this mindset piece we discuss can be used by anyone for any situation, any challenge you're facing in life. It's a skill you can develop. It's a muscle you can flex. And you can use it to be impossible and ultimately do the impossible in your life. So if you guys want to learn more about how we've cultivated this mindset, how we've broken it down, how we've structured it, how we've incorporated it into our own training and our own performance in life and in business, then feel free to reach out to us at www.impossibleperformance.com. We have resources and programs we're actively building right now. Those will be available later this year. But if you'd like to go ahead and get a jump start on it and learn how you can start building this into your own life, go ahead and reach out to us. There's a contact form on there. We would love to help in any way we can to help you build this into your life and start learning the structure and the theory and the practice behind this. Because I promise you, when you can change the default messaging and programming of your mind and let the body reflect the strength of your mind and follow suit in that capacity, you open yourself up to a whole new world of potential you never would have allowed yourself to believe was available to you. So reach out to us there. All of our resources, all of our media is found at impossibleperformance.com. And recently, we've actually had the opportunity to start working with some pretty incredible brands that we want to take some time to mention to you guys. First of all, our oldest and some of our most favorite people to work with are the people at King and Fifth Hat Company. Guys, we've talked about it a lot, but as always, and again, you see us wear them on the platform, you see us wear them on the podcast, you see us wear them at speaking gigs. They have hats to fit any head of any size in any situation. It's the most comfortable, most breathable, most highly responsive headwear that I've ever utilized in my life. I know Austin feels the same. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our members of Team Impossible have come to love King and Fifth because they actually supplied our whole marathon team this year with free hats, the lime neon green that you guys see us wear. And it's one of the best running hats I've ever used. It's incredibly sweat wicking, keeps your head dry, and also keeps it cool at the same time. So go on and check them out. We'll put their link in the show notes. You can use code Impossible Performance for 10% off of your purchase. We also have had the amazing opportunity to recently start working with Barefoot Shoes. They are incredible people who are redesigning footwear, both for performance, function, and healthy foot development in day-to-day life. And as you guys know, I can't afford to lose any more foot function than I already have. And
down one can't be down two.
Yeah. Switching to barefoot has been a huge game changer for me, especially in terms of my deadlift. just having the stability and assuredness to be able to plant my feet down, know that that prosthetic is not moving out from under me. And not only that, it allows me to come up on the toe of the prosthetic, get deeper into the beginning part of the lift, and get more leg engagement into the lift, which has helped driving up my deadlift numbers pretty significantly. So you can follow the link in the show notes to get 10% off at barefoot.com, anything on their website. You guys definitely want to try out what they're doing because it's some incredible footwear. It's extremely comfortable on the foot. It'll definitely make your foot work, but that's all good stuff because it's building up all those little micro muscles that you're not used to using from wearing your Nikes all day long. And beyond that, you guys have seen us start recently drink a lot of Kinetic drinks on the podcast. We've been chatting with those guys, looking at setting something up there. But Kinetic has been the number one thing both Austin and I have been able to use in help pulling ourselves off of caffeine.
Yeah.
We got to a point where we were taking quite copious amounts of caffeine.
A lot.
Like 600 milligrams a day, a lot. Just to keep up with everything we've got to chase in life and keep us functioning, keep us performing. And I think it's something that a lot of people involved in gym and strength training and athletics and everything else, we kind of go down that rabbit hole and get a little too deep in it sometimes. Kinetic is 100% USDA certified organic. There's no added sugar, all natural flavorings. It literally tastes like you're eating a piece of fruit.
Yeah.
Like it is that realistic. Like you are shocked from the moment you take the first sip at how like real and natural and authentic it tastes. And it has a small dose of 12 grams of ketones that just gives your brain some immediate usable fuel. And I'll tell you what, it is amazing how this product basically took me from 600 milligrams a day of caffeine to 0 in the span of about a week. And I still don't even believe or understand how it happened, but it has definitely been a great addition because now I'm only consuming caffeine maybe once or twice a week around performance and training as opposed to high doses every single day.
Yep.
And the ketones in Kinetic, they have a unique patented formula that uses a mixture of salts and alcohols to allow, a good immediate effect as well as more of a sustained release. So more to come in hearing about Kinetic, but definitely check them out because they've been a phenomenal company so far and just an unbelievable product. Mm-hmm. So that's all we've got for today, guys. Austin, brother, do you have anything else for the people?
No. Like Matt said, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you and hear of more what we could do as a company to really provide the best for you. But follow us on this mindset journey because it really is something special, and we hope that you can take something, if not a lot, from it. So,
yeah, we've always known that we're never going to be the strongest, the fastest, the most physically adept in any given area, but we do know that we can overcome more challenge than anyone else. And we do that through use of mindset. We allow our bodies and empower them to achieve things physically that should not be able to be done through manipulation of our mindset and through reinforcement and building up those thoughts and those patterns and those messages that allow our body to follow suit. And you can do the exact same thing in your life. This is something that is accessible to everybody. Nobody's talking about this though. You hear people talk about mindset and motivation and inspiration. You hear the David Goggins types who again are just incredible people talk about what they've done in their life. But nobody's really talked about structure, framing, or how can you program this? How can you train this muscle? How can you flex it? And that's what we want to offer. That's what we want to provide to you, a whole untapped world of potential that exists right within your own mind that you can bring to your own physical performance, your own performance in business and in life and whatever area is most important to you. So like Austin said, reach out to us, impossibleperformance.com. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at impossible.performance. Austin, brother, where are you located?
Austin_strength on Instagram.
Absolutely. And as always, guys, we appreciate everything you've done to support this show. If this episode has meant something to you, if you found some useful lessons within it, please feel free to share it with anyone you know who you think it could help. That's how we spread our message. That's how we gain new followers, and that's how we help the Be Impossible message to reach as many people as possible. Because at the end of the day, our vision at Impossible Performance is that we are striving to build a global culture of strength, fostering a spirit of growth in constant pursuit of the impossible. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, be impossible.